Hello, it's Jeta, and today I thought I would show you all of the books that I managed to read in 2020. So I read 50 books, which was my challenge, and I'm so happy that I managed to do that. But I track all of the books that I read on Goodreads. You can actually set a challenge every single year for how many books you want to read, and it even shows you the kind of percentage of how far along you are on the reading challenge, which I think is really cool. So I'm gonna get my laptop. And it's really cool because it gives you like little statistics, which is quite nice. So as I said, I read 50 books, and the amount of pages I read on average was 12,415, and the shortest book was 38 pages long, and the longest book was 501 pages long, which was The Handmaid's Tale. And my average book length was 248 pages, and my average rating for this year was 3.9 stars, which is actually pretty good because for me, I only give 5 stars to my absolute favourite books, and I would say I give 4 stars to a book that I thought was really good, and 3 stars is like an okay book, but I didn't necessarily really like it. Okay, so I'm now going to start reading all the books that I read. I won't talk too much about them because there are 50 and I don't want this video to be super long, but I am going to be picking my top 5 and talking about those at the end, so do watch till the end of the video because otherwise you'll miss out on that. Okay, so the first book I read was On a Scale of 1 to 10 by Celine Scott. Then I read Fated by Terry Terry, They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, Not Forever by Mallory Blackman, Guts by Raina Telgemeier, Be Prepared by Vera Brosgol, Click by Kayla Miller, One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus, Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon, The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky, Ink by Alice Broadway, The Art of Being a Brilliant Teenager by Andy Cope, The Little Prince, the graphic novel, which was illustrated by Joan Spark, Spark by Alice Broadway, which is the sequel to Ink, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Then I read Scar by Alice Broadway, again the third in the trilogy, Switched, Torn and Ascend by Amanda Hocking. I completely forgot to mention that I also read Find Me by Owen Wymark, which is a play which I had to read for my GCSE drama course. Animal Farm by George Orwell, I read this for my GCSE course. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by J.K. Rowling, I read this with my sisters. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. We Are All Made of Molecules by Susan Nielsen. Tragédie de Fabula by Leon Tolstoy. A Bad Beginning from the Series Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. Every time I do mention a series of unfortunate events, I did read these to my sisters, so it was kind of separate to what I was reading by myself. Understanding Epilepsy by M.C. Walker and other authors. More of Me by Catherine Evans. Anne Frank's Diary by Anne Frank. Book of Lies by Terry Terry. I was actually a bit disappointed by this book because I love Terry Terry as a writer. I really like her books. I really enjoyed the Contagion series and the Slated series, and honestly this was a little bit of a letdown. I just thought that the character development for the other characters apart from the twins was very limited, and that could have been developed further. And also I didn't realise it was such a magical book, if that makes sense. I thought the beginning was quite good, but by the end it just felt quite rushed and a bit all over the place, and I really wanted to like it, but I just didn't really very much. The Reptile Room from a Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. The Vagina Monologues by Eve Ensler. Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Dear Evan Hansen the novel, so that was based on the musical. The Body Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson. I read this in my English lesson. The Wide Window and The Miserable Mill by Lemony Snicket. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and then I also read the Handmaid's Tale graphic novel, which had amazing illustrations. This honestly became one of my all-time favourite books. So good. Normal People by Sally Rooney. Beauty Sleep by Catherine Evans, The Austere Academy by Lemony Snicket, The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. So the next 5 books I read as part of a readathon. So I read Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl, The Naughtiest Girl in the School by Enid Blyton, George's Marvellous Medicine by Roald Dahl, Utterly Me, Clarice Bean by Lauren Child, Horrid Henry Shows Who's Boss by Francesca Simon, and finally I read The SS Elevator by Lemony Snicket from A Series of Unfortunate Events. Yes, so those are all of the books that I read in 2020. Okay, so now I'm going to show you my top 6 books of the year. I could have cut it down to 5, so I've got 6, which is a bit of a random number, but there we go. So these are not in any order, I am kind of just saying them at random, but the first one was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. So in this world, there is a thing called Deathcast, where they basically send you a message telling you that it's your death day. So on the day you die, you know, and essentially live out your last day and do whatever you want with it, instead of it being this unexpected thing. So the story follows 2 boys who both have been informed that they're going to die today. They don't know how or anything like that, but they know it's going to be today. So they meet on an app where you can have a last friend, essentially, to live your last day with. And he meets this boy and they do lots of things on their last day, and it's such a sad, almost friendship, because they both know that by the end of the day, they're both going to be dead. So for me, there are 2 things that really made this book stand out and made me really like it. And the first thing is that it really had me gripped. And literally almost every chapter there was like a cliffhanger, and you thought they died, but they didn't. And then you just wanted to keep on reading. There was no bit of the story that was slow paced, but at the same time it really flowed, it didn't seem rushed. And the 2 characters really developed their friendship in a really organic way. It didn't seem forced at all. The second thing, however, is a bit more about the writing, because every few chapters there was a mini chapter which was written not in the perspective of either boys. It was written in the perspective of a character that we hadn't met, and really wasn't the focus of the story, and you had just a glimpse of their life. And most of these characters were also dying that day, but some of them were like family members of the people who died, and throughout the book you could link these characters together. You started to get this bigger picture of a whole town, a whole world of people's lives that you only get glimpses of, and it was really, really nice because you only saw a snapshot, and even if you wanted to know more, you weren't given that more. You were left not knowing about their story. And I think there was something really beautiful in that, the fact that this book that only really looked at 2 boys incorporated so many other people's lives, and it really made you think about the connections that you have with people, and I thought it was really, really well constructed and written. So the second of my top 6 is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. So one of the reasons why I really liked it is because it was written as letters, and I think there's something quite personal about letters. It almost felt in a way like you shouldn't be reading these letters, that you were intruding on this person's life, but at the same time, the reader was referenced, and so you felt like you were invited to read this, that you were supposed to read this, and that it would help the character almost find peace if you did read it, that the story would be shared. It was a really, really sad book, and I did cry quite a lot while reading it. But I really liked that it touched on a lot of different issues that young people may face, but at the same time, it did it in a really sensitive way. Another thing that I quite liked about the book is that the main character is quite innocent. You could really see the inexperience that the character had, and the growth and development of the character was really, really well portrayed throughout the book. So the third book that I really, really liked was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This was beautifully written. It was really easy to understand, but at the same time, the language was so precise. It's like every sentence mattered. Every sentence had a purpose, and every word was picked so carefully. It felt like I was almost looking at a piece of artwork when I was reading it, because it just felt so perfectly fit together. So if you don't know this story of The Handmaid's Tale, it's about a place called Gilead where they have taken all the fertile women and they have made them handmaids who have to produce children for the more upper class members of society, and they have so many restrictions, and it is essentially a dictatorship in Gilead. It focuses in on one of the handmaids called Offred and looks at her story and how she got there, what her life was before and how it is now. But Margaret Atwood has said in her interviews that everything she wrote in there was true, that it had happened in some way at some time, but she's just taken the things and put them together. And it is obviously fiction, but all of those things have happened at some point in some way, which I think just made the book even more powerful. So yes, it was amazing and I really, really liked it. So let me just check. Yes, so the next book that I really, really liked was Normal People by Sally Rooney. I have not read very much adult fiction. In fact, I can't think of a romance adult fiction that I have read before this. I mainly stick to YA romance, and I read this and it felt different. I knew immediately that this was not a YA because the way that the characters were built and the way that the relationship between the two main characters was portrayed was so much different to YA, and in a way it felt so much more real. The two main characters, Connell and Marianne, their relationship seems so much more raw. It feels real. And when I read it, it felt like, yes, these are real characters and this is what their relationship was. I think with YA, sometimes it's overly romanticized and it always seems so perfect, when in real life it probably isn't like that. And reading this really, it just changed my perspective a little bit on YA. I think it can be a little bit too perfect in YA. Things that you want to happen don't happen. So I feel like in YA, sometimes it can be predictable because you want something to happen and you know that the author's going to give it to you by the end, or at least something similar or something you can be satisfied with. And in this book, I found that the things I wanted to happen didn't. The characters were almost frustrating because they weren't doing what I wanted them to do. I really liked the fact that Sally Rooney didn't give us what we wanted to happen, because in reality, it probably wouldn't. And so it just felt a lot more real, and that's what I liked about it. I feel like I've waffled on enough. So I'm going to move on to the next book. I just had to put this book in, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Even though I feel like everyone's read this, I read it this year and I just felt like it taught me so much. For me, the book is about childhood and innocence and not knowing who you will be or who you are right now, and sometimes getting lost on the way. But it's about reminding you to kind of be present in the moment and just kind of live each day and know that you'll end up where you have to be one day, but you shouldn't worry about it, and that you should kind of treasure the moments now, because when you're older, you'll remember those moments and you'll know how golden and important they were. And so not to lose those in a way. The last book that I thought I had to mention is Animal Farm by George Orwell. So this is an allegory to the Russian Revolution, and it is set on a farm where the animals take over and overthrow the humans and run the farm. But on the way, the pigs, which are the kind of leaders of the farm, use communism to essentially just make a dictatorship, and slowly, without the other animals realizing, they are in a worse position than they were with the humans. And I thought it was so cleverly written. It's really easy to read as well, because the language is super easy, which Orwell actually did on purpose, because he thought that the manipulation of language and use of propaganda is what allows dictatorships to form. And so he wanted to write the book as plainly and simply as he could, so that everyone could read it and not feel barred by the language used. So yes, those are my top 6 book recommendations. There are a few books which I started reading and I didn't finish this year. I started reading The Wind in the Willows this year. I read a few chapters and just could not get through it. It just, like, it was beautifully written. I really liked the descriptions, but it just felt like too much description, very little story. Which I guess is expected because it's a children's, like a young children's book, but I know I need to give it another go, and I will, but I decided to put it down this year. Another book I haven't finished, which I definitely plan on reading, is Sapiens. I started this book. I think I've read like 60 pages of it, and it's not that I don't like it, I just got really distracted by other books and ended up putting it aside. The last book that I started and did not finish is The Lovely Bones. This was very unintentionally put down, but it came to December time, Christmas holidays, and I felt like reading a fun, light-hearted book, and this is quite depressing, and I didn't want to put myself in that mindset because I was feeling quite happy at the time, and so I decided just to put it aside, but I will definitely be reading it early this year. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed all the books that I've shared. I always find these videos quite fun to watch because they give me so many recommendations. Also, this year I'm reading 65 books, so if you do want to keep up with what I'm reading, then you can go and follow me on Goodreads because I track all the books I read on there, so I will link it down below. Yes, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye!